Alex Salmond, former First Minister of Scotland and leader of the Alba Party. Good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon, Jeremy.
You said to me on the phone in the car earlier, I said, how's your day? You said, well, an interesting one, Jez. How's it been? Humza Yousaf has gone, Alex Salmond. Are you smiling or what? Come on, look at the grin.
Well, let me say, I mean, look, there is a certain empathy that I feel for Humza today because, I mean, you know, it's never easy when you're a First Minister or a Prime Minister to resign because everybody in politics, that's the job they want. And, you know, I've been there, Jeremy. I've been there on my resignation day as First Minister 10 years ago. So I do feel a certain empathy for Humza Yousaf today, and I wish him and his family well.
It's very, very admirable. Let's just talk about the SNP very candidly with you. The SNP was this shining light for independence, and as it became more and more popular, people joined the party. I mean, even a year ago, Alex, after you'd gone and Nicola Sturgeon and her husband were really two powerful, the most probably powerful people in Scottish politics. We go forward 12 months. Peter Morrell, the ex-chairman of the party, CEO, whatever, charged by the police. We don't know quite yet with what for. Nicola Sturgeon, well, she resigned out the blue, and then everybody said, well, we know why. Her heir apparent, never elected by the Scottish people, has lasted barely 12 months. And I want to put to you what I put to somebody before, Alex. If I was Scottish and I'd paid my £5 to join the SNP in my dream to get independence, I'd feel really, really cheated right now. Would you understand that?
Well, I'd be redirecting my standing order to Alba, of course, if I was in that position. But, yeah, you've described the kind of decline and fall of the party in recent years. And, you know, it should be said that, you know, disasters and mishaps and scandals can be before any party. I mean, that's part of the politics, part of life. And certainly, you know, I heard, incidentally, before I came on, I heard, I think, the deputy chairman of the Tory party saying all this disarray and the SNP was going to damage independence. Well, you know, if political disarray damaged causes, then the cause of unionism would have been sunk by the disarray in the Tory party years and years ago. So, look, these things happen. What I'm much more concerned about is that the cause of independence hasn't been articulated or put forward with any force or vision for some time. I'm always amused when I hear that, you know, the Scottish government has spent all its time talking about independence instead of the bread and butter issues. In fact, independence is the last thing they do anything about. You know, they've been immersed in this, well, you'd call it a woke agenda or culture wars or identity politics, whatever you want to call it. This came in with the Green Alliance, because in Scotland we have a Green Party, which is not really fundamentally has a priority green issues like the environment and climate change, but is also more concerned about self-identification and a whole variety of other things. Now, the SNP and the Green Alliance, their bandwidth for the last 2 or 3 years has been absorbed in politics with these incredibly complex, difficult, incredibly divisive issues. They hadn't had time to keep their eye on the ball of independence on the one hand for the SNP, or for that matter, climate change on the other hand, for the Green Party. And they've been into this highways and byways, so that's really my regret. Rather than
would it be fair,
misfortunes.
Alex, would it be fair to say, I get your point that independence about articulating it, but it would also be fair to say that in the last few years, apart from not talking about independence and going down this sort of hate crime road and that blimmin' Isla Bryson, I mean, it's just appalling. I'm still there. I don't quite know how that comes to be. But actually, the things that matter to Scottish voters as they matter in England to English voters, the state of the health service, the state of jobs, that hasn't improved at all under the SNP's leadership. I'm talking about after you've gone, and I suspect that a lot of people, forgetting Labour, forgetting Tories, will feel cheated. And I guess what you're saying is that Alba should now be your party, bearing that torch and standing up and fighting that independence battle. Do you still think there's a battle to be won, Alex?
Well, yes, there is. And the agenda that we put forward to Humza to try and save his job over the next week, that Ash Regan, as our representative in the Scottish Parliament, put forward was exactly that. It was a new priority on independence, a move away from identity politics and instead the protection of women and girls. And thirdly, a move on to what we call the people's agenda, back to housing, education, health, and above all, jobs. And interestingly enough, and this is perhaps the tragedy of what's happened to Humza, on Friday he made a housing announcement, a welcome one, in Dundee. He allocated £80 million for community housing. Now, I know that he took that £80 million out of the effective active travel budget, which is one of the green fascinations. Those £200 million are an active travel budget. Now, don't get me wrong, Jeremy. I think active travel is a very good thing, and I like people active and I like people travelling. But it's not as important as people having a roof over their heads, having a proper home insulated. And that I just saw in that, and that's why I thought Humza might be worth saving. I saw in that free of the Greens, who he sacked last week, he was actually going to reprioritise all these vast pockets of green slush funds, which are in the Scottish Government at the present moment, and redirect them to things that really matter, like housing, health, and education. Too
little, too late again, maybe. Can I just, for people just tuning in, the irony of what you just said is not lost on me. So Ash Regan, Alba's only MP, stands in the SNP leadership campaign against Humza Yousaf, right? Loses. He does whatever, and she flounces off to you with respect, becomes Alba's only MP.
No flouncing. You don't know Ash. He doesn't do flouncing.
All right, no flounce. Listen, I'm surrounded by flounce. Ryan's going to be my producer for an hour and 10 minutes. He's flouncing around like anything. But here's the truth. The irony of Humza Yousaf having to get on bended knee to Ash Regan, the Alba MP this week, to try and save his skin. Surely, Alex, that cannot have been lost on you. There is a slight, wonderful irony about that, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you something even more interesting, Jeremy. At 7 o'clock this morning, Humza phoned Ash Regan, said he was still fighting for his job, and complimenting Ash on the very sensible agenda she'd prepared as the basis for negotiations, which were meant to take place between him and her today. And he said it's a very reasonable, that was his word, a very reasonable document, and one that which he could agree with.
What changed from 7 o'clock to midday?
Well, it's even more interesting than that. Last night, someone gave a briefing to the Times newspaper, it's the front page of Scotland, saying that Humza Yousaf was resigning and that John Swinney was to take over. Now, I'm trying to reconcile the First Minister phoning Ash Regan this morning, apparently in good faith, saying, look, I'm still fighting to save my job, your proposals are very reasonable, with who briefed that to the Times paper last night. Said as a source close to and a friend of the First Minister. These two things don't fit. I'm not certain that everyone around Humza Yousaf has been acting in his best interest.
Dirty business politics, isn't it, Alex?
Yes, it is. I just don't like to. I don't like to see double dealing of that kind. I mean, interchanges in politics are fine. You know, I'll debate with anyone, anytime, anywhere, as hard as you like. But, you know, when you've got a team who's meant to be batting for you, I don't like the suggestion, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but the two things don't square. That Times article, briefed last night, published this morning, doesn't square with the 7 o'clock phone call to Ash Regan.
That's an exclusive. Just briefly, two final questions, and it's so great of you, busy day for you. What next? What happens? Is the SNP going to be forced out? Will there be an election? Do you think that they'll elect a new leader and try and get some across-the-board support? What do you think happens next, Alex?
Yeah, I don't think there's a stomach for an election, particularly when, of course, there's going to be a general election this year. I mean, you know, the idea that the people in Scotland are going to be gagging for another election, I think, is wrong. And I don't think that will be forced through. I think the SNP will be given the opportunity to elect a new leader and therefore nominate a new First Minister. The one cautionary note I would say, I'm not going to say who the best SNP leader is. I now lead the Alba Party. It's not my business. But the Greens are trying to do that, of course. They're trying to select the SNP leader and then pull the plug from under them, I would think. But the one thing I would say to my old colleagues is this, that you have to watch the mandate argument. I mean, Humza wasn't elected directly by the people. Now the baton is going to be passed on again, to quote his words, to somebody else who's not going to be elected by the people. De minimis, at the very least, that person would be better served by having a mandate from the party membership. Otherwise, they'll have no mandate at all. And it's just an observation that in these circumstances, it's better for that person, whoever it may be, to be able to say, well, at least I've got a mandate from my party, even if I don't have a mandate from an election.
It's an absolute bugbear. You've taken me up on it before. I don't believe, and you'll tell me why I'm wrong, but I don't believe that any political leader should be able to run a country until the people have voted for them. But of course, people will say, yeah, but they vote for a country. They vote for a party. They don't vote for an individual. I feel I know you well enough to ask you the obvious question. Alex Salmond, leader of Alba, ex-SNP on the day that Humza Yousaf resigned. Ready? We're friends. Who's the worst political leader, Liz Truss or Humza Yousaf?
Oh, Liz Truss. I mean, Humza lasted at least length of 12 lettuces. Therefore, it's Liz. Liz wins the title.
You're a legend, Alex Salmond. Thank you so much indeed. A good friend of Talk